Hello everyone, welcome to English in Advance. My name is Jessica and I am so glad you've chosen to spend some time with me today. Whether you're on your morning walk, cooking a meal, commuting to work, or simply relaxing at home, you're in the right place to take your English to the next level. Before we begin, I want you to think about something. Have you ever felt that learning English is like climbing a huge mountain? You learn so many advanced words, complex grammar rules, and long lists of vocabulary. But when it comes time to actually speak, you feel stuck. The words don't come out naturally. You feel like you're translating in your head, and the conversation feels slow and awkward. What if I told you that the secret to fluent, natural-sounding English isn't about learning more difficult words? What if the secret is actually about mastering the simple words, the words that native speakers use every single day without even thinking about it? Today, we are going on a special journey. We're not going to study a long list of complicated vocabulary. Instead, we're going to explore the small, powerful words that I personally use every single day. These words are like the secret ingredients in a recipe. They might seem small, but they add all the flavor and make the dish perfect. We will look at how these simple words can soften your sentences, add emotion, connect your ideas, and make you sound more like a native speaker. And we won't just talk about them, we will see them in action. I'm going to share many real-life stories with you. Stories about people in everyday situations, so you can hear exactly how these words are used in real conversations. By the end of our time together, you will not only understand these words, but you will also feel confident using them yourself. You will learn to integrate them into your own speaking, making your English flow with ease and confidence. This is more than just a listening practice. It's a speaking practice and a confidence-building session all in one. So find a comfortable spot, take a deep breath, and let's begin this journey to unlock the secret of everyday English fluency. Let's start with a group of words I like to call the softeners. These are words that make our language more polite, less direct, and more friendly. In English, being too direct can sometimes sound a little bit rude or too strong, especially in professional or new social situations. Using these softener words is like adding a little cushion to your sentences. They make people feel more comfortable and open to your ideas. The first word, and one of my absolute favorites, is actually. I probably use this word dozens of times a day. Actually is a fantastic word to use when you want to gently correct someone, state a surprising fact, or add a thought that might be slightly different from what someone expects. It makes your correction or statement sound less confrontational and more like a helpful observation. Let me tell you a story about a young woman named Sarah. Sarah had just started her first job at a marketing firm. She was smart and had great ideas, but she was also a little shy and worried about sounding too aggressive in meetings. During her first week, her team was having a brainstorming session for a new project. Her manager, a man named Mr. Thompson, said, "So the data shows that our main customers are young people, so we should focus all our efforts on social media." Everyone in the room nodded, but Sarah had a different thought. She had looked at the data very carefully. Her heart started beating a little faster. She wanted to speak up, but she didn't want to challenge her new boss directly. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," she took a deep breath and said, "That's a great point, Mr. Thompson." Actually, I was looking at the report this morning, and I noticed something interesting. It seems a large portion of our sales actually comes from an older demographic, too. Do you see what she did there? By using the word actually, she presented her different idea not as an argument, but as an interesting discovery. It softened her comment and showed that she was being thoughtful, not critical. Mr. Thompson paused, looked at her, and said, "Really? That is interesting. Tell me more." Sarah's small choice of word opened the door for a productive conversation instead of shutting it down. Let's practice this together. Imagine a friend says to you, "You must be from London, your accent is British." And you could reply, "Actually, I'm from Manchester." Try saying that out loud. "Actually, I'm from Manchester." It sounds so much more polite and friendly than just saying, "No, I'm from Manchester." Another wonderful softener is we use or it's even more casual spoken form when we want to be a little bit vague or when a statement is not 100% true. It makes our opinion sound less absolute and more flexible. Back to Sarah's story. Later in the meeting, a colleague presented an idea for an advertisement that Sarah didn't love. It wasn't a bad idea, but she didn't think it was the right fit. Instead of saying, "I don't like that idea," which is very direct, she waited for a moment and then said, "That's an interesting concept. I feel like it's kind of similar to what our competitor did last year, though. Maybe we can find a way to make it more unique." The phrase "kind of similar" was much gentler than saying "it's the same." It allowed her colleague to consider her point without feeling defensive. The colleague thought for a moment and replied, "You're right, it is kind of similar." Let's think about a different angle. Let's practice this one. Imagine you're trying a new food and someone asks if you like it. If it's just okay, you can say, "It's kind of good." Repeat after me. "It's kind of good." This is a very common and natural way to express a mild opinion. Or if you're feeling a little tired but not exhausted, you can say, "I'm kind of tired." It perfectly describes that in-between feeling. Similar to is the phrase, I guess. We use "I guess" to show that we are not completely certain about something, or perhaps we are agreeing to something with a little bit of reluctance. It signals uncertainty in a very natural way. Later that week, Sarah's friends invited her out for a movie on a Tuesday night. Sarah was feeling a bit tired from her new job and wanted to stay home, but she also didn't want to sound unfriendly. Her friend asked, "Are you coming to the movies with us tonight?" Instead of a flat no, Sarah said, "I'm still pretty tired from the week. I guess I could come for a little while, but I can't stay late." The phrase "I guess" showed her friends that she was making an effort for them. Even though she was tired, it communicated her slight hesitation perfectly. Another way to use it is to express a simple conclusion. For example, if it's cloudy outside, you might say, "I guess it's going to rain." It's not a scientific fact, just a simple observation of what is likely to happen. Let's try it. Imagine someone asks, "Is the library still open?" If you're not sure, but you think it probably is, you can say, "I guess so." Let's say that together. "I guess so." It's a perfect simple response for everyday situations. Finally, in this group of softeners, let's talk about maybe and probably. These two words are essential for talking about the future or possibilities. Maybe suggests a lower chance, around a 50% possibility, while probably suggests a higher chance, perhaps 70% or 80%. At the end of that first productive week, Mr. Thompson came to Sarah's desk. He said, "You did some great work this week, Sarah. Are you interested in helping with the research for the new campaign?" Sarah was thrilled. She wanted to scream, "Yes," but she kept her professional calm. She replied, "Yes, I am definitely interested." Then Mr. Thompson said, "Good. It will be a lot of extra work, probably some late nights." By using probably, he was giving her a realistic expectation without making a definite promise. It prepared her for what was likely to happen. Then he asked, "Can you send me a summary of your ideas by Monday?" Sarah knew she had a busy weekend planned. She said, "I can try my best. Maybe I can get it to you by Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning at the latest." Using maybe was a smart move. It showed she was willing to try but didn't make a firm promise she might not be able to keep. These softener words, actually, kind of, I guess, maybe, probably, are not just filler words. They are tools for navigating conversations smoothly and politely. They show emotional intelligence and an awareness of other people's feelings. As you practice your English, I encourage you to listen for these words and try to use them. Start small. The next time you want to correct someone gently, try using actually. The next time you're not 100% sure about something, try saying I guess or kind of. You will be amazed at how these small words can make a big difference in how you communicate and how others respond to you. Now let's move on to our next group of words. If the softeners are like a gentle touch, this next group, the emphasis words, is like a confident high five. These are the words we use to add strength, emotion, and certainty to our sentences. They make our language more colorful and expressive. Using them correctly can show your passion, your excitement, or your strong belief in something. Let's explore words like really, so, absolutely, definitely, and for sure. The word really is one of the most versatile and common emphasis words. You can use it to intensify an adjective, an adverb, or just to show surprise. Let me tell you a story about a man named Mark who was having a birthday. His friends decided to throw him a surprise party. One of his friends, Liam, was in charge of decorations. Liam's girlfriend, Chloe, came to help. When she walked into the room, which Liam had filled with balloons and streamers, she stopped and said, "Wow, Liam, this looks really amazing." The word really told Liam that she wasn't just being polite, she was genuinely impressed. It added a layer of sincere emotion to her compliment. Later, when Mark walked in, everyone jumped out and shouted, "Surprise!" Mark's eyes went wide. He was completely shocked. He looked around at all his friends and said, "I really had no idea. You guys are the best." In his sentence, really emphasized his complete lack of expectation. It made his thank you feel much more powerful. Let's do a quick practice. Imagine you just ate a delicious piece of cake. Instead of just saying, "This cake is good," add some emphasis. Repeat after me. "This cake is really good." Can you feel the difference? It makes your opinion stronger and more genuine. You can also use really as a one-word question to show surprise or ask for confirmation. For example, if your friend says, "I'm moving to Australia," you can just respond with, "Really?" It invites them to tell you more. Another incredibly common emphasis word is so. We often use so before an adjective or adverb to make it stronger, similar to really, but it often carries an even more emotional and sometimes informal tone. At Mark's party, his best friend David gave a short speech. He said, "Mark, I've known you for over 10 years, and I am so happy to call you my friend. You've always been there for me, and I'm so grateful for our friendship." The repeated use of so made his speech sound incredibly heartfelt and emotional. It was clear that his feelings were strong. After the speech, Mark went to David and said, "Thank you so much, man. That meant a lot to me." Notice how so much is a common pairing. We don't usually say really much, we say so much. Let's practice with so. Think about a movie you love. Instead of, "It was a good movie, let's make it stronger." Say it with me. "It was so good." Now think about a difficult task. You could say, "This exam is so difficult." Using so is a simple way to make your daily conversations more expressive and vibrant. Now for the heavy hitters. Absolutely and definitely. These words express 100% certainty. There is no doubt. Absolutely is often used to agree with someone enthusiastically or to describe something that is perfect or complete. Definitely is used to state a fact or a plan with complete certainty. At the party, someone asked Mark if he was having a good time. He replied with a huge smile, "I am absolutely having the best time. This is the perfect birthday." His use of absolutely showed that his enjoyment was total and complete. Later, Chloe asked Liam, "Do you think Mark was surprised?" Liam, remembering the look on Mark's face, said, "Oh, definitely." He had no clue. I will definitely remember his reaction for years. Using definitely showed that Liam was completely sure. There was no room for doubt. Let's practice these. Imagine a friend asks, "Was the concert amazing?" You can reply with enthusiasm, "It was absolutely incredible." Try that. Now imagine someone asks if you are going to study English tomorrow. You can answer with firm commitment, "Yes, I am definitely going to study." Repeat it. I am definitely going to study. These words add a powerful sense of conviction to your statements. Finally, let's look at a more casual but equally strong phrase, "for sure." This is a very common informal way to say definitely or absolutely. It's perfect for conversations with friends. As Mark's party was ending, David said to him, "We should do this again next year." Mark laughed and replied, "For sure, but maybe give me a little warning next time." For sure was the perfect, relaxed way to agree to the plan. It's friendly and shows solid agreement. Let's practice. If a friend asks, "Can you help me with this tomorrow?" you can give a friendly, certain yes. "For sure, I can help." Let's say it. For sure. It's a great phrase to add to your conversational toolkit. These emphasis words, really, so, absolutely, definitely, for sure, are like turning up the volume on your feelings and thoughts. They help you communicate more clearly and with more personality. As you listen to English speakers, pay close attention to when and how they use these words. Then try to incorporate them into your own speech. When you feel strongly about something, don't be afraid to show it. Add a really or a so. When you are 100% certain, use definitely or absolutely. It will make your English not only more correct, but also much more alive. Having explored how to soften our language and how to add emphasis, let's now turn to the words that act as the glue of our conversations. These are the connector words. They help us link our ideas together logically, creating a smooth flow from one thought to the next. Without them, our speech would be a series of short, choppy sentences. Mastering connectors like so, because, but, however, by the way, and anyway is crucial for sounding fluent and coherent. Let's begin with two of the most fundamental connectors, because and so. Because explains the reason for something. It answers the question, why? So explains the result of something. It answers the question, what happened next? They are like two sides of the same coin, cause and effect. Let me share a story about a traveler named Leo. Leo was at the airport, excited for his vacation to Italy. He had planned everything for months, but as he stood looking at the departure board, he saw the word "canceled" next to his flight. His heart sank. He felt a wave of frustration. Because the flight was canceled, he knew his entire plan was in jeopardy. The reason for his problem was the cancellation. He went to the airline desk. The line was incredibly long. He waited for over an hour. When he finally got to the front, the agent said, "I'm very sorry, sir." The flight was canceled because of a technical problem with the aircraft. The reason was explained. The agent continued, "There are no more flights to Rome today, so we will have to book you on a flight tomorrow morning." The result of the cancellation was a new flight the next day. This simple exchange shows how vital, because and so are. Leo had to find a hotel for the night. He was tired and disappointed, so he decided to find a hotel near the airport. The reason he felt this way? Because his dream vacation had started with a major problem. Let's practice this. I'll give you a cause and you create the effect using "so." The cause is, it was raining heavily. Now you create a result. You might say, "So I took my umbrella." Let's try it together. It was raining heavily, so I took my umbrella. Now let's do the reverse with "because." I'll give you a result and you create a reason. The result is, I was late for work. Now add a reason. You could say, because the traffic was terrible. Let's say the full sentence. I was late for work because the traffic was terrible. Practicing these helps you think in a connected way. Next up are but and however. Both of these words are used to show a contrast or an unexpected turn, but is more common and informal, used frequently in everyday speech. However is a bit more formal and is often used at the beginning of a sentence, followed by a comma. It creates a stronger, more deliberate pause. As Leo sat in his airport hotel room, he felt miserable. He wanted to be upset, but then he had another thought. He could spend the evening feeling sorry for himself, but that wouldn't change anything. The situation was bad. However, he was in a new city, even if it was just for one night. He thought, I am tired and frustrated. However, I can still make the best of this situation. This shift in thinking, marked by the word however, was a turning point. He decided to go out and explore. He was in London, a city he had never visited. He wanted to see a famous landmark, but it was already getting late, so he just decided to find a nice local restaurant. The contrast between but and however is subtle but important. Using however can make your argument or story sound more thoughtful and structured. Let's practice. Try completing this sentence. I wanted to go for a run, but... You could finish it with, but it started to rain. Now let's try with however. Studying grammar can be boring. However, it is essential for clear communication. Practicing both will give you more flexibility in your speaking and writing. Finally, let's look at 2 wonderful connectors for managing a conversation. By the way and anyway. By the way is the perfect phrase to use when you want to introduce a new topic or a piece of information that just popped into your head. It's a smooth way to change the subject. Anyway is used to return to the main topic after a distraction or to summarize and move on. Leo found a small, cozy restaurant near his hotel. He sat down and ordered a meal. He started chatting with the friendly waiter. They were talking about the food. Leo said, "This is delicious. By the way, do you know if there's a good bookstore around here?" He used "by the way" to smoothly switch from talking about food to asking for directions. The waiter gave him some directions, and they talked about books for a few minutes. Then Leo, wanting to return to his meal, said, "Anyway, thank you so much for the recommendation." "I really appreciate it." He used "anyway" to signal the end of that small side conversation and return to the main situation. These two phrases are incredibly useful in daily chats. Let's practice. You're talking to a friend about your weekend plans. Suddenly, you remember something you need to ask them. You can say, "Oh, by the way, did you remember to call your mom?" Let's say that. "By the way, did you remember to call your mom?" Now, imagine you've been telling a long story with many details, and you want to get to the final point. You can say, "Anyway, to make a long story short, I finally passed the exam." This use of "anyway" is like a signpost that says, "Let's get back on track." These connector words, so, because, but, however, by the way, anyway, are the traffic signals of our language. They tell the listener when to stop, when to go, when to turn, and why. By using them effectively, you guide your listener through your thoughts, making your stories and explanations easy and enjoyable to follow. My advice is to actively listen for them in podcasts, movies, and conversations. Notice how they are used. Then, challenge yourself to use one or two of them in your next English conversation. It will make a world of difference. After learning how to connect our ideas, it's equally important to know how to sequence them in time. When we tell a story or explain a process, we need words that guide the listener from one step to the next. These are the time words, and they create a clear and organized narrative. Without them, our stories can become confusing. Let's explore some of the most common time words. Then, next, after that, finally, in the meantime, and eventually. Let's imagine a young woman named Chloe who decided to try baking a complicated cake for the first time for her friend's birthday. She found a recipe online that looked beautiful, and she was determined to follow it perfectly. The story of her baking adventure is a perfect way to see these time words in action. First, Chloe went to the supermarket and bought all the ingredients: flour, sugar, eggs, and a lot of chocolate. Then she came home and carefully laid everything out on her kitchen counter. She read the first step of the recipe. She had to mix the flour and sugar together in a big bowl. Next, she needed to melt the chocolate over hot water. This part was a bit tricky, and she had to be careful not to burn it. Then and next are often interchangeable and are the most common words for showing a simple sequence. They tell us what happened immediately after the previous action. Let's practice this. Think about your morning routine. You could say, "I wake up and then I brush my teeth. Next, I make a cup of coffee." Try saying a simple sequence of your own using then and next. Back to Chloe's kitchen. She successfully melted the chocolate. The recipe said, "Combine the melted chocolate with the egg yolks." She did this carefully. After that, she had to whip the egg whites until they were stiff and fluffy. The phrase after that is very similar to then and next, but it often implies a slightly longer pause or a more distinct new stage in the process. It's like turning a page in a book. Chloe followed the instructions, and after that, she gently folded the fluffy egg whites into the chocolate mixture. The cake batter was finally ready. She poured it into a pan and put it in the oven. Now comes a period of waiting. The cake needed to bake for 40 minutes. She couldn't move on to the next step of decorating until the cake was baked and cooled. This waiting period is where a great phrase comes in. In the meantime. In the meantime means during the time before something else happens. Chloe had 40 minutes to spare, so in the meantime, she decided to clean up the kitchen. It was covered in flour and sticky chocolate. She washed the bowls, wiped the counters, and made the kitchen look tidy again. Using in the meantime shows that you are describing an action that fills a gap in the main sequence of events. Let's practice it. Imagine you are waiting for a friend who is running late. You could say, "My friend will be here in 20 minutes. In the meantime, I'll read my book." Let's say that together. My friend will be here in 20 minutes. In the meantime, I'll read my book. The timer for the oven beeped. The cake was baked. Chloe took it out carefully. It smelled wonderful. She let it cool for a long time. There were many more steps: making the frosting, letting the cake cool completely, spreading the frosting, and adding decorations. She worked for hours. There were moments of frustration, especially when some of the frosting dripped down the side, but she kept going. And finally, after a long afternoon of work, the cake was finished. The word "finally" is so important. We use it to introduce the very last action in a long series of events. It often carries a feeling of relief or accomplishment. Chloe looked at her creation. It wasn't perfect, but it was made with love. She felt so proud. Now let's consider one more word: eventually. Eventually means after a long time, or after a series of delays or problems. It suggests that the outcome took a while to achieve. We could say that Chloe eventually finished the cake. This word emphasizes the long process and the effort it took. For example, if you are learning a difficult skill, you could say, "It was very hard at first, but eventually I learned how to do it." Eventually highlights the journey and the perseverance required. The story of Chloe's cake shows how these time words build a narrative. They are the signposts that guide us through the story. First, then, next, after that, in the meantime, finally, eventually. Using them will make your own stories much clearer and more engaging. I encourage you to try telling a short story about your day or a recent experience. As you speak, consciously try to use these time words to structure your narrative. You'll find that it helps you organize your thoughts and makes your English sound much more fluent and natural. Navigating a conversation is not just about stating facts. It's a dance of sharing ideas, listening to others, and responding thoughtfully. A huge part of this dance is knowing how to agree and disagree politely. This is where our next set of daily words comes in. These phrases help us build rapport, show that we are listening, and express our own opinions without creating conflict. Let's explore phrases like exactly, "You're right, I agree, I see your point, I'm not so sure about that, and actually, I think..." To see these phrases in action, let's imagine a conversation between two good friends, Maya and Tom. They have just walked out of a movie theater after watching a new science fiction film. Maya is buzzing with excitement, but Tom looks a little disappointed. Maya starts, "Wow, that was one of the best movies I've seen all year. The special effects were incredible." Tom, wanting to acknowledge her enthusiasm but also be honest, doesn't say, "I disagree." Instead, he uses a softer approach. He says, "You're right, the special effects were amazing. The visuals were definitely top-notch." The phrase "you're right" is a simple and powerful way to show agreement on a specific point. It validates the other person's opinion and shows you are listening. Let's practice it. Imagine someone says, "It's really cold today." A simple, natural response is, "You're right, it is." Try saying that. Maya continues, "And the story. It was so original and thought-provoking. Here, Tom's opinion differs. He uses another great phrase to show he understands her perspective before presenting his own. He says, "I see your point about the story being original, but I felt it was a little confusing." "I see your point" is a fantastic phrase. It tells the other person, "I understand your logic. I see why you think that way," which is a very respectful way to precede a different opinion. It creates a bridge, not a wall. Maya, curious about his view, asks, "Really? What did you find confusing?" Tom explains, "Well, the ending felt very rushed. They didn't explain why the main character made that final decision. I think the writers should have spent more time on that." Maya thinks about this for a moment. She hadn't seen it that way, but now that Tom mentions it, it makes sense. She replies, "You know what? I agree. Now that I think about it, the ending was a bit sudden." The phrase "I agree" is a direct and clear way to express that you share the same opinion. It's simple, strong, and always appreciated in a conversation. Let's imagine another part of their conversation. Maya says, "But the main actor's performance was just perfect. He deserves an award." Tom feels differently. He thinks the actor was just okay. Here he can use a very polite and gentle phrase for disagreement. "I'm not so sure about that." He continues, "He was good, but I don't think it was his best performance." The phrase "I'm not so sure about" that is a wonderful, soft way to express doubt or a different view. It's much less confrontational than "I disagree." Let's practice it. If someone says, "I think all sequels are bad," you could gently respond, "I'm not so sure about that. Some are quite good." As they continue walking, Tom says, "Overall, I'd give the movie a 6 out of 10. Maya is shocked. She loved it. She exclaims, "A 6? No way, it was a 9 at least." Tom laughs. "A 9? How?" Maya says, "Because it made me think." A great movie is one that stays with you after you leave the theater. Tom, hearing her passionate explanation, smiles and says, "Exactly! That's a perfect way to describe it. And for you, this movie did that." The word "exactly" is a powerful, enthusiastic way to agree. It means, what you just said is 100% correct and perfectly captures my thoughts too. It shows strong alignment. Finally, Tom offers a concluding thought. "I think people who love visual effects will love this movie." Maya wants to add her own, slightly different conclusion. She uses a phrase we learned earlier, but in a new context. "Actually, I think it's more than that. Actually, I think anyone who likes a film that challenges them will enjoy it." Here, the phrase "actually, I think" allows her to gently modify or expand on Tom's idea without directly contradicting him. It's a collaborative way to build on a conversation. These phrases are the tools of a great conversationalist. They allow for a healthy exchange of ideas. So next time you're in a discussion, try to use them. If you agree, show it with a warm "you're right" or an enthusiastic "exactly." If you have a different opinion, introduce it gently with "I see your point, but," or "I'm not so sure about that." This will not only improve your English fluency, but also your communication skills in any language. Sometimes in conversation, we need to be a little bit imprecise. We might not know the exact details, or we might want to speak in general terms. This is where vagueness words come in. Now, the word vague can sometimes have a negative meaning, like someone is being unclear on purpose. But in everyday, casual English, these words are used all the time to make our speech sound more natural and relaxed. Let's look at words like something, somewhere, someone, a thing or two, and that kind of thing. Let me tell you a lighthearted story about a man named David who picked up a new, mysterious hobby. His friends, Liam and Chloe, were very curious. On Saturday morning, Liam called David. "Hey man, do you want to grab lunch today?" David replied, "Sorry, I can't." "I'm busy this afternoon. I have to go somewhere." The word somewhere is perfect here. It tells Liam that David has a destination, but it doesn't give any specific details. Liam, his curiosity piqued, asked, "Oh, really? Somewhere interesting?" David just laughed and said, "You could say that. I'm meeting someone there to work on something." Now, David is being very mysterious. He's using these wonderfully vague words: somewhere, someone, something. They allow him to talk about his plans without revealing what they are. This is a very common and playful way to use these words. Someone refers to a person without naming them, and something refers to an object, idea, or activity without specifying it. Let's practice. Imagine you are planning a surprise for a friend. You could tell them, "I bought you something special for your birthday." Repeat that. "I bought you something special." Or if you hear a noise outside, you might say, "I think someone is at the door." Later that week, Chloe saw David and he had a small cut on his hand. She asked, "What happened to your hand?" David smiled mysteriously and said, "Oh, I'm just learning a new skill." You learn a thing or two about getting bumps and bruises when you're a beginner. The phrase, "a thing or two," is a fantastic idiom. It means some knowledge or experience about a subject, but it's deliberately vague. It implies learning without giving away the details. For example, you could say, "My grandpa was a chef, so I know a thing or two about cooking." It suggests you have some expertise in a humble, casual way. Chloe was even more curious now. "What kind of skill? Are you learning woodworking or maybe rock climbing?" David chuckled. "Let's just say it involves being creative, using your hands, that kind of thing." The phrase "that kind of thing" is an incredibly useful and common way to end a list or an explanation when you don't want to or can't list everything. It means, "and other similar things." It makes the conversation feel relaxed and informal. For example, if a friend asks what you do on weekends, you might say, "Oh, I like to read, watch movies, listen to music, that kind of thing." Let's practice that. Try describing your hobbies and end with that phrase. "I enjoy hiking, painting, and that kind of thing." Finally, the day of the big reveal came. David invited his friends over. In his garage, there was a beautiful handcrafted wooden chair. Liam and Chloe were amazed. "You made this?" Liam asked, stunned. David explained that he had taken up woodworking. The someone he had been meeting was his instructor, a retired carpenter. The somewhere he went was the community workshop, and the something he was working on was, of course, the chair. He looked at his friends and said, "I wanted to do something different, something creative." These words, something, somewhere, someone, a thing or two, that kind of thing, are not lazy words. They are skillful tools for casual conversation. They allow us to be imprecise when precision isn't necessary, to maintain a little mystery, or to speak in general terms. Using them will make your English sound much less like a textbook and much more like a real, relaxed conversation between friends. So don't be afraid to be a little vague sometimes. It's a natural part of everyday speech. A great conversation is a two-way street. It's not just about speaking. It's about making sure your listener is following along with you. This is where confirmation words and phrases come in handy. These are the little questions we add to the end of our sentences to check for understanding and to invite the other person to engage with us. They turn a monologue into a dialogue. Let's look at some of the most common ones. Right? You see? And does that make sense? To illustrate this, let's listen in on a heartwarming story about a young woman named Anna who is teaching her grandfather, Robert, how to use a new smartphone. Robert is a bit intimidated by the technology, and Anna is being very patient. Anna holds the phone and says, "Okay, Grandpa." The first thing is unlocking the phone. You just press this button on the side, right? She adds the little tag question, right? To check if he has understood that first simple step. Robert nods. Okay, the side button, right? He is repeating it back to confirm. Using right is a quick and easy way to make sure you and your listener are on the same page. Let's practice it. You could be explaining a rule in a game. The goal is to get the most points, right? Try saying that. Next, Anna shows him the screen. These little pictures are called apps. Each one does something different. This green one is for making calls, and this blue one is for messages. You just tap on the one you want to open, The phrase is incredibly common in spoken English. It's a bit like saying, "Are you following me?" Or, "You understand what I'm talking about, don't you?" It creates a sense of shared knowledge and makes the conversation more inclusive. It's a very friendly and informal way to check in. Let's practice. You could be telling a friend a story. It was one of those really busy days at work, Robert looks at the screen, a little confused by all the icons. Anna points to the camera app. Let's try taking a picture. You tap on this camera icon and the camera opens up. Then you see what you want to photograph on the screen. See? There's my face. You point it at what you want, and then you just press this big white circle at the bottom to take the picture, you see. The phrase you see is similar to, but it's often used when you are demonstrating something visually. It literally asks, "Do you see what I'm showing you?" It's perfect for instructions and demonstrations. After a few tries, Robert successfully takes a blurry picture of his own nose. They both laugh. Anna then decides to explain how to send the picture in a message. This is a multi-step process. She says, "Okay, so first you open the message app. Then you choose the person you want to send it to. After that, you tap this little paperclip icon to attach something, and you choose the photo from your gallery." It sounds like a lot of steps at first. Does that make sense? The question, "Does that make sense?" is a wonderful, clear, and polite way to check for understanding after a more complex explanation. It shows that you care if the other person is confused, and it gives them a clear opportunity to ask questions. It is especially useful in a teaching or professional context. Robert thinks for a moment and says, "So, message, person, paperclip, photo." "I think so. The paperclip is the important part, right?" Anna smiles. "Exactly. You got it." By the end of the afternoon, Robert is proudly sending pictures to all his family members. Anna's patient teaching, filled with these little confirmation phrases, made him feel comfortable and confident instead of foolish. These phrases, right, you see, does that make sense? Are small but mighty. They transform your speaking from a lecture into a collaboration. They show your listener that you value their attention and understanding. I encourage you to start using them. After you explain something, add a little, right? Or at the end. After a longer explanation, ask, "Does that make sense?" It will make you a more effective and engaging communicator in English. Let's be honest. Even native speakers don't always speak in perfect, complete sentences. Real, spontaneous conversation is often filled with little pauses and hesitations as we gather our thoughts. The words we use to fill these small gaps are called filler words. Now, there's a common misconception that using filler words is always bad. If you use them too much, it can make you sound uncertain or unprofessional. However, using them sparingly and in the right way can actually make your English sound more natural and authentic. Let's talk about some common fillers like, well, and like. Imagine this scenario. It's a wedding, and the best man, Chris, is suddenly asked by the groom to give a speech. Chris hadn't prepared anything. He's nervous, but he's also honored. He stands up, takes the microphone, and his mind goes blank for a second. He starts, "Well, I wasn't expecting to do this, but I am so happy to be here for Mark and Sarah." The word "well" at the beginning of a sentence is a classic filler. It's a perfect way to buy yourself a moment to think before you start speaking. It signals, "I'm about to say something. Just give me a second." It's a very natural way to begin a response to a question or to start a thought. Let's practice. If someone asks you, "What do you want to do this weekend?" you can start your thoughtful reply with, "Well, I was thinking of going to the mountains." Chris continues his speech, speaking from the heart. "I've known Mark since we were kids. We've been through so much together, scraped knees from falling off our bikes, studying for exams, celebrating the good times." Here, he uses not as a question to check understanding, but as a filler phrase. In this context, it's like saying, "You can imagine," or "as you probably know." It creates a conversational, informal tone and helps to connect with the audience by assuming a shared experience. It makes the story feel more personal. He gets emotional as he thinks about his friend getting married. He says, "Seeing him with Sarah, it's just perfect. She makes him so happy." The phrase is used to clarify or correct what you've just said, or to add emphasis. Here, Chris uses it as he searches for the right word. He starts a thought, pauses, and then uses to rephrase it more effectively. It shows his genuine, unscripted emotion. It makes his speech feel real and heartfelt, not like he's reading from a card. Finally, he talks about the couple's future. "They're just so good together. They have so much fun. They're always laughing and going on adventures. I know they're going to have an amazing life together." In modern, informal English, especially among younger speakers, the word "like" is a very common filler. It can be used to introduce a quote, an example, or simply to fill a pause while thinking. While overusing "like" can sound very informal, a little bit of it in a casual, emotional context, like this one, can sound very natural. For example, "I was so surprised when he told me." Chris finishes his speech, and everyone claps. It wasn't a perfect, polished speech, but it was genuine. The small, natural fillers he used, actually added to its charm. They showed that he was speaking honestly and from the heart. The key takeaway here is balance. You don't want to fill every sentence with "like" and but you also don't need to be afraid of them. They are a natural part of spoken English. My advice is to listen to how native speakers use them in casual conversations. Notice that they use them to manage the flow of their thoughts. As you become more comfortable with speaking, you might find yourself naturally using a well here or an I mean there. And that's okay. It's a sign that you're moving from textbook English to real conversational English. When we need to explain a complex idea or summarize a situation, it's useful to have words that help us get to the main point. I call these the generalizing words. They signal to the listener that you are about to provide a summary or the most important piece of information. They are incredibly useful in both casual conversations and more formal settings like work or university. Let's look at some of the most effective generalizing words. Basically, essentially, in general, usually, and typically. To understand how these words work, let's join a university student named Emily. She has just come from a long, complicated lecture on economics, and her friend, Ben, who missed the class, asks her what it was about. Ben says, "I couldn't make it to Professor Davis's lecture." Was it important? What did I miss? The lecture was an hour long and full of details, charts, and theories. Emily can't repeat the whole thing, so she uses a generalizing word to start her summary. She says, basically, she was talking about the law of supply and demand. The word basically is a fantastic common word used to introduce the simplest, most fundamental idea. It's like saying, if I have to explain this in one sentence, this is it. It cuts through all the complexity and gives the main idea. Let's practice it. Imagine someone asks you to explain how a car works. You could start by saying, basically, an engine burns fuel to create power that turns the wheels. Emily continues her explanation. She gave a lot of examples, from the housing market to the price of coffee. Essentially, what she was arguing is that the price of everything is determined by how much of it is available and how much people want it. The word essentially is very similar to basically, but it often sounds a little more formal. It means at its core or in its true nature. It suggests you have thought about the topic and are presenting its most vital element. Ben is starting to understand. Okay, so supply and demand. I get the general idea. Emily then adds more context using another generalizing word. She says, in general, when supply is high and demand is low, prices drop. But when demand is high and supply is low, prices go up. The phrase in general is used to make a broad statement that is true most of the time, but may have some exceptions. It's a way of talking about a general rule or pattern. For example, so you could say, in general, eating fruits and vegetables is good for your health. Now let's look at usually and typically. These two words are very similar and are used to describe what happens in a normal or common situation. Emily explains a specific scenario to Ben. She talked about what happens during a holiday season. Usually the demand for popular toys goes way up, right? So the prices increase. Typically, you'll see stores run out of stock for the most popular items. Both usually and typically describe a predictable pattern of behavior. They help explain what to expect in a given situation. You could say, I usually wake up at 7 a.m., or typically the weather in summer is very hot here. By using these generalizing words, basically, essentially, in general, usually, typically, Emily was able to give Ben a clear, concise, and accurate summary of a very complex lecture in just a few sentences. She didn't need to remember every single detail. She was able to communicate the main points effectively. These words are your best friends when you need to simplify. The next time you are trying to explain something complicated, or when you are summarizing a book, a movie, or a conversation, Try starting with one of these words. Start with basically or in general. It will help you focus your thoughts and deliver a clear message, making you sound both intelligent and fluent. In all of our interactions, politeness is a kind of social magic. Using polite language can open doors, make people want to help you, and turn potentially negative situations into positive ones. Our final group of daily words focuses on exactly this: the simple, powerful phrases of politeness that are essential for everyday life. Let's look at phrases like, I was wondering, would you mind, could you please, sorry to bother you, and thank you so much. Let's follow a tourist named Kenji, who is visiting London for the first time. He finds himself in the middle of the massive, confusing Paddington train station. He needs to find the platform for his train to Oxford, but he is completely lost. He sees a woman in a station uniform, but she looks very busy. He doesn't want to interrupt her. So instead of shouting, "Where is the train to Oxford?" he approaches her politely. He starts with, "Sorry to bother you, but I'm a bit lost." The phrase "sorry to bother you" is a wonderful way to begin an interruption. It shows that you respect the other person's time and you acknowledge that you are taking them away from something. The station employee, who was indeed busy, looks up and her expression softens because he was so polite. She replies, "It's no bother at all. How can I help you?" Kenji then needs to ask for information. Instead of a direct command like, "Tell me how to find my train," he uses a softer, more indirect question form. He says, "I was wondering if you could tell me which platform is for the train to Oxford." The phrase "I was wondering" is an incredibly polite and gentle way to ask for something. It turns a direct question into a soft inquiry, making it much more likely for the person to respond positively. Let's practice that. Instead of asking, "What time is it?" try the more polite form. "I was wondering if you could tell me the time." The employee points him in a general direction and says the platform is down the hall and to the left. Kenji sees the signs but is still a bit unsure. He sees a man standing nearby looking at the departure board. Kenji approaches him. He needs to ask the man to move slightly so he can see the board better. Instead of saying, "move," he uses another magical, polite phrase. He says, "Excuse me, would you mind shifting just a little so I can see the board?" The question, "Would you mind?" is used to ask for permission to do something or for someone else to do something for you. It is extremely polite. The man smiles and says, "Oh, of course not," and takes a step to the side. Kenji finds his platform number. It's platform 7. He heads in that direction but finds his suitcase is very heavy. He has to carry it up a small flight of stairs. He sees a young man walking by and decides to ask for help. He uses a classic polite request form. "Could you please give me a hand with this suitcase?" It's quite heavy. The phrase "could you please" is a standard and universally understood way to make a polite request. The "please" adds an extra layer of courtesy. The young man immediately says, "Sure, no problem," and helps Kenji carry his bag up the stairs. Finally, Kenji is on the correct platform, his heavy bag beside him. He is relieved and grateful. He turns to the young man who helped him. He doesn't just say thanks. He wants to show how much he appreciates the help. So he says with a warm smile, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." The phrase "thank you so much" is much stronger and more heartfelt than a simple "thank you." It's perfect for situations where someone has gone out of their way to help you. Kenji's journey through the station, from being lost and confused to finding his platform, was made successful not just by getting information, but by how he asked for it. His use of these simple, polite phrases turned strangers into helpers. These words, "Sorry to bother you, I was wondering. Would you mind, could you please? Thank you so much," are more than just words. They are keys that unlock kindness and cooperation in others. Practice them until they become automatic. They will serve you well in every English conversation you ever have. We have journeyed together through so many of these small, essential words that form the backbone of daily English conversation. We've looked at the softeners that make us sound polite, the emphasis words that add emotion, the connectors that create flow, and so many more. From Sarah's first work presentation to Leo's travel mishap, from Chloe's bacon adventure to Kenji's journey through the train station, we've seen how these words bring conversations to life. The main lesson, the one thing I truly hope you take away from our time together today, is this: fluency isn't a destination you reach by memorizing a dictionary. Fluency is a path you walk every day, and that path is paved with these simple, powerful, everyday words. They are the tools you use to build connections, to share your thoughts, to express your feelings, and to navigate the thousands of small interactions that make up a life. Words like actually, really, so, because, but then, right? And I guess are not just vocabulary to be learned, they are habits to be formed. So here is my call to action for you. Don't feel overwhelmed and try to use all of these words at once. That's not the goal. The goal is to start small. Choose just 2 or 3 words from our session today that you found interesting. Maybe it's the gentle power of "I was wondering," or the enthusiastic agreement of "exactly," or the simple storytelling flow of "then." Whatever you choose, make it your mission to use those words today. Try to slip them into a real conversation, or even just practice them in sentences you say to yourself. The real magic happens when you move a word from your head to your mouth. When you use it, you own it. And when you own enough of these everyday words, you will find yourself speaking English with a new level of confidence and naturalness. You will stop translating and start communicating. Thank you so much for joining me on English in Advance. I am Jessica, and it has been an absolute pleasure to share this journey with you. If you found this practice helpful and want to continue improving your English with real-life stories and practical tips, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next episode. And I would love to hear from you. In the comments below, please write a sentence using one of the words we practiced today. I read every single comment, and it's a fantastic way for you to practice and for us to build this wonderful community together. Until next time, keep listening, keep speaking, and keep making those small daily steps. You are doing an amazing job. Take care, and goodbye for now.